The record-shattering television show Game of Thrones is known for explosive battle scenes, cringeworthy incest, mind-bending cliffhangers, incest that we're somehow fine with, unbelievable special effects, almost but not quite incest, and characters we become wholeheartedly invested in. A personal favorite of mine is the Mother of Dragons, whose official title is Daenerys Stormborn of the House Targaryen, blah, 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 blah. You can read the whole rest. Here, we're going to refer to her as Dany. She's kind of important, and she has 3 dragons. These dragons are a central plot point to Game of Thrones. Dany used fire and blood to hatch 3 petrified dragon eggs, producing her children Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. Game of Thrones is mainly set in Westeros, but Dany starts season 1 in Essos across the sea, determined to take the Iron Throne that's rightfully hers and rule the 7 kingdoms. She gets there quickly and efficiently. It only takes her 6 entire seasons. Her dragons are some of the show's most epic characters and incredible feats of CGI. Some critics whine about how scientifically unrealistic these dragons are. Fans often counter this argument by pointing out that they are magical, fictional, and the biological children of a human woman. Critics, open your minds. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Dany's dragons. Dragons have scaly reptilian bodies with long tails and necks, their faces and backs lined with spiny horns and webbing. They grow from the size of a kitten to, according to one episode director, the size of a Boeing 747, approximately 230 feet long and a 210-foot wingspan. Rhaegal and Viserion were locked in underground captivity for about 2 years, which significantly hindered their development, making them smaller than Drogon, Dany's main steed. As aerial predators, dragons have 4 limbs, 2 hind legs and 2 wings as forelimbs, and powerful muscles to support their entire weight at high speeds and elevations. Their bodies echo those of bats and extinct pterosaurs. While physically large, the show depicts them moving through the air with surprising amounts of grace. 16 million people watched the season 7 finale, and a cultural icon like this show is bound to communicate biomechanical messages to viewers. Let's start up close. Reptilian scales are made of beta-keratin, a protein that protects reptiles' skin by making it more rigid and controls cell growth and renewal, making it an ideal outer shell for a dragon. Lizard scales form in an overlapping plate-like structure, much like shark dermal denticles, which are V-shaped scale structures that reduce drag and allow the organism to swim faster. In the air, a similar outward layer could help aid a dragon's aerodynamics for speed and hunting prowess. A structure fractures if an impact load is forcefully applied in a concentrated area, disrupting the surface's even distribution of stress. Crack propagation theory could thus scientifically explain why Dragonhide was impenetrable to a multitude of smaller arrows and swords for 6 seasons, but Viserion was killed by the Night King's thin ice spear managing to pierce or crack open his body. This guy should definitely do javelin in the Olympics. Pterosaurs, the earliest and largest creatures to have evolved flight independently of insects, birds, and bats, existed in the Cretaceous period. Like dragons, they were bipedal with wings as forelimbs, apex predators, and had long necks. However, they were gliders. The energy expenditure of flapping meant soaring was the only possibility. Dragons push off from the ground with their legs, meaning they need the additional weight of legs to get airborne. They gain height by beating their wings, meaning they need strong chest muscles to stay in the air. Pterosaurs took flight from the ground, thus prioritizing strength in their wings and having weak legs. The heaviest bird on Earth capable of flight today is the Cory bustard, which weighs about 18 kilograms and launches at a standing start like the pterosaur. The flight pattern of Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal is reminiscent in that of a bat. Dragons' spines, head to tail, are about as long as their wingspan, unlike bats. Thus, they need a significantly larger amount of power to support their additional mass. Both bat and dragon wings have a skeletal forelimb structure covered with muscly skin, whose flexibility catches the wing as they fly. Their joints have incredible dexterity, which helps them powerfully flap their wings and maneuver aerodynamically. Birds and pterosaurs have evolved to incorporate air into their physical bodies to benefit their flying abilities. Cavities of air both lighten their bodies and simplify weight and maneuverability. Could dragons do this as well? Here is a close-up of spongy bone, which is porous while still containing blood vessels, marrow, and nerves. While hollow bones would lessen the dragon's skeletal weight, an adaptation that could potentially reduce the metabolic cost of flight, they would most likely buckle under the force with which dragons tend to land on screen, as seen in these examples. They need minerally dense and thus heavy bones to support their activities on the show. When bones receive a fast impact load, they have a stiffer reaction, which is more likely to result in a fracture. A cancellous or spongy bone has more elasticity than compact bone, and thus absorbs the kind of impact loads more effectively. Avian bones do incorporate a kind of truss structure, a morphological pattern that gives bones a high load-bearing capacity, which stabilizes a structure by evening out the stress. Due to the dragon's incredible mass, one could hypothesize that their enormous bones could incorporate this truss pattern to stabilize its skeleton while leaving some air sacs to stay in the air. Mechanically, truss structures are stiff but lightweight, both components that would help a huge vertebrate stay airborne. However, in Season 7, as we see here, we get a brief look at a dragon skull, which appears to be a solid block of bone. If this was the case for the entire dragon skeleton, the animals would scientifically be unable to fly. The dragons in Game of Thrones are animated from the inside out, first a skeleton, then muscles, then skin, detailing, and then insertion into a scene. The CGI skills are unparalleled, and clearly they worked hard to make these magical creatures as realistically rooted in biomechanical science as possible. These dragons' scales and wings measure up to facts, but unfortunately their size and bones would most likely leave them grounded. Here, we did not talk about dragons' fire-breathing abilities, but that additional capacity to withstand and produce such heat is a good reminder that these creatures are completely magical. Enormous creatures with teeth as long as swords are historically associated with evil, but these dragons follow Dany as a force for good and justice. For the most part, as you saw before, one of them kind of turned into an evil ice zombie dragon that's now coming to kill everybody, but it's fine. As you can see, the incredible amount of detail that went into the CGI creation of these creatures was certainly rooted in avian science, but digging a little bit deeper reveals some biomechanical flaws. TV shows like Game of Thrones show millions of worldwide viewers the fantastical visions of creative geniuses. Unpacking the science that is woven into these magical storylines is a great way to analyze pop culture and see that biomechanics are truly everywhere.